Welcome to another episode of the Financial Advocate Podcast. This is Ryan Stark here, actually without Colin today, but we still have a wonderful guest, Ricky Adams. He is from Rosenberg, Martin, Greenberg, and he is an estate attorney, among other things, as he will tell you. And today we're going to be talking about Aretha Franklin passing away without a will. So Ricky, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit and tell us about yourself, and then I'll get into some of the things I think of as a financial advisor and how my brain works simply in terms of estate planning, and then you can help kind of broaden the topics and answer some questions for me.
Sure. Thank you for having me this morning, Ryan. I appreciate it.
Of course.
We're missing Colin, but he's here in spirit.
That's right.
So I do, I'm an attorney. I do estate planning, elder law planning, probate, and trust administration. We also do some adult guardianships and special needs planning. So kind of a broad base. I was a paralegal for 10 years before I became a lawyer in these fields. So I have a pretty broad depth of experience, and I love working with the community and doing things like this to educate the community.
Wonderful. I appreciate having you here.
Yeah, thank you.
And first thing I want to bring up about dying without a will. It's a little bit of a murky subject. It feels a little weird to talk about, but I think it's really important. And I think I want to start with the most difficult thing, which is Aretha Franklin actually passed away with pancreatic cancer. So it wasn't something that was extremely sudden. It wasn't like a heart attack, as we talked about before that you mentioned. What do you think causes people to not get their wills done and their estates done and their trusts, and why don't they move forward?
I think it's a common problem, unfortunately, Ryan. I think we don't like to face our mortality. We don't like to have these discussions, not only with our advisors, but with our families. Sometimes that's one of the hardest roadblocks to getting a plan done, is even if I meet with the family, I'm sure you've had it too, when you meet with the family, they don't want to take that step to make those decisions, and then they ultimately leave those decisions to be made by someone else, like the court, in Aretha Franklin's, her case, or the statutes, which is what would happen in Maryland as well. When you die without a will, you die intestate, when you basically let the law divide up your property as the law sees fit and not how you would want it done.
And in this case, it looks like her children are going to get it because she wasn't married. It shows that she was actually married twice, but her most recent marriage she was divorced from also long ago. So now being dying intestate, it'll go equally to her children.
Right.
However, in this case, I thought one of them would be either the personal representative or the executor, as I learned that is the same thing depending on what state you're in.
Right.
But at least it looks like they nominated the niece to do the role of executor. Is that something common, that children choose somebody outside of themselves?
Sometimes. So I think it depends on the dynamics in the family. It could be that they didn't want to have any issues and to mitigate any potential issues, because the kids are interested persons in the estate. So that gives them the ability to interact with the court and request information to get things done with the court. They have the right to do that. Whereas the niece is kind of outside of that. She's at the next line based on relation to Miss Franklin. And so maybe she is just a good party for them. Maybe she is able to calmly do the job, so to speak, because it's a job. The personal representative basically will take Miss Franklin's assets, and after she pays the expenses, she'll deal with the creditor, she'll deal with the estate tax return that has to be filed, she'll deal with all the work, and then she'll distribute the money to the heirs. If there's anything left, I assume there will be, but depending on if there's any claims against the estate, if she had any creditors, she'll have to deal with that basically. Okay. And so it's a job, it really is.
It's a long process.
You have the right mindset to do that.
Yeah, we hear about it in terms of people going through the process, and sometimes we'll be involved in the beginning and the end, but I know it can be a grueling process for somebody to have to do that, and I'm actually signed up to do that for my parents.
There you go.
So as long as I accept that job.
It's a duty, right?
It's a duty that I'll have to do. But hopefully with my background it'll run smooth, and I'll be ready to go, and I'll have some help.
Exactly, definitely will, yes.
So that'll be good. So another thing I wanted to mention is that her attorney tried to convince her to do a will, but she just didn't get around to it. It said, and he actually said, and this is from the Washington Post. I took a couple articles to read, New York Times, Washington Post, and The Guardian. And the one I'm referring to now is Washington Post, where she never told me, no, I don't want one. She understood the need. It just didn't seem to be something she got around to. With end-stage cancer, or if you know you're going to pass away, what do you think it's the job of the attorney to do to push somebody to do estate planning? Or do you feel that you know, the end of the life journey is so difficult. Do you just let them do what you want? I guess, I know as professionals, we can only push so hard. You can't grab their hand and sign something for them. So
it's a tough call, I think. I think it's part of our duty as professionals to, you know, remind them, maybe involve the family if you can, and say, look, to the kids, you know, maybe you need to help your mom realize that, you know, these things are important. Does she want to decide, or does she want someone else to decide? Because in Ms. Franklin's case, the state will decide what happens. And it could be that maybe that's what she would have wanted anyway.
Right.
But potentially, we don't know.
Right.
But I rather, you know, and I tell clients this all the time, I'd rather know what you want, and we would, you know, put that in place, even if it is what the statutes would have had anyway.
Right.
At least then we know what your voice, you know, your voice is heard, we know what you would have wanted.
Right.
Because it could be that she maybe have wanted her niece to act in that capacity.
Right.
Maybe they knew that. Maybe that's why they nominated her and consented to it. But it could be maybe she would never want her niece to do it. I don't know.
Right.
You never know.
Right, that's true.
Sometimes there are family members, especially in vulnerable communities, like the LGBTQ community, there could be people who don't agree with your lifestyle, and suddenly under the statutes, they have authority over your estate, and you may not have wanted that.
That's so true.
And so you should take
Something I never
steps
even thought about, but yeah,
to stop that.
that's happening all
to name
over,
different people.
It's interesting. So Don Wilson was one of the lawyers for almost 3 decades. So I'm assuming he did his due diligence and said what he needed to say. Because, you know, being around and having a relationship with 30 years, you know, you get beyond cordial and you start telling people what they need to hear. You do it in a nice way, but you know, knowing somebody for 30 years, so I'm sure he was pushing, and it just seems like some people can't deal with the idea of estate planning, but it's so important to deal with because now whatever she didn't do, the personal representative will have to do for her.
And hopefully they know what she would have wanted.
Right, and she worked so hard for all her money, which I read that she was private about her money and what she wanted, and if she would have done a trust, then she would have kept everything private. That's correct?
Or it would have been, yeah. So a trust is not, you don't actually file that with the probate court in Maryland. It would be private. So the only thing that is in the estate is anything that was in her name alone upon her death. So if she had it in a trust, it wouldn't be in her name, it would go through the trust. The clauses based on when she died. And it could be that she had life insurance or other assets that are outside of her estate anyway. But yes, it's much private. She could have wanted to go to a charity potentially, you know, for musicians, for people who love music. You know, who knows? We'll never know.
Right.
And I think that's one of the sad parts, especially when you look at celebrities. They're such high-profile figures that, you know, you think they want to leave a legacy and not unanswered questions, you know, related to this.
So true. Yeah, so true. And I know that also one of the things that happens is there's nothing messy going on right now. But we were talking about before the podcast, Prince, who in 2016 passed away, and he's still going through his court process. This could easily drag out if somebody decided to reach out and say, hey, I spent a lot of time with her, I think I deserve this money.
Where's my piece?
Where's my piece? Exactly. Now, what does somebody have to do to come after that? Did they just go to the court and they kind of just file?
They get an attorney, file something, especially if they're an interested person. They could potentially, or it could be a creditor. Let's say she owed someone a lot of money. They could put a claim against the estate potentially. Whereas if it was in a trust, it would be protected from that. Or if there was a beneficiary in the asset, it would be protected from creditor claims. So it kind of leaves it open. It's vulnerable to different types of claims from interested people and from creditors. And we all get to see it happen, which she may not have wanted.
Right.
And I think with Prince's death, you know, he was very private during his life about his music, about safekeeping. He had like that infamous vault of, you know, music that was never released. And now the estate is going to release it. And I think based on what we know, he would never have wanted that. But he didn't take the steps to protect it, to protect his legacy.
Right.
And that's a problem. He could certainly have afforded to do a trust.
Right. When you think about the difference between what you could pay for estate taxes, assuming the state has the state, federal, and state taxes.
Exactly.
But you think about spending a little bit of money on a trust versus $80 million, somebody grabbing a chunk of that and having to put, you know, a big percentage on there, which we've seen.
Exactly.
And we can always speculate about the money. But all I can say is, if it's going through probate, it's probably going to be a lot.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. A lot more than it would have been to just do a trust.
Right, of course.
Do some simple planning.
And have the privacy and the protections.
Right.
And also know what her wishes were.
Right. So the next thing I want to talk about besides, actually, something that was interesting also was that she was so protective of her finances. And it seemed like, it seemed weird to me that I guess she didn't take the extra steps to protect something that was so important to her during her life.
Right.
But I guess that just goes back to what we were saying in terms of the death that's so looming and it's so scary. And maybe planning for it makes it more real than you ever thought it was in the first place. I mean, looking through these 3 articles, it's almost mentioned in each one that she seemed to be private, maybe not vault private, such as before, but it still seems to be the same where she didn't really want people to know what was going on. But I think I see that a lot too, not only in famous people, we all see it because we hear about it on the news, but a lot of people don't want to deal with this, and a lot of people don't do necessary planning. And if you have a little bit of money that your kids could use, and then that goes through probate, I see that being a big problem for people.
Exactly.
Paying unnecessary taxes, and anything helps,
That's what you could do: payable on death, beneficiaries on your accounts. You could do a life estate deed on your house. You could help, avoid probate, so to speak. And sometimes that's the best plan. So when you talk to your financial advisor or your lawyer, you can figure that out. Because especially with the blended families we talked about, the stepchildren in Maryland, they actually get disinherited if you die without a will, and so that could obviously be an issue. If some people love their stepchildren as their blood relatives, but the statutes don't treat them the same way when it comes to distribution, and so that even having a simple will or putting them on an account can avoid that. And that way, they're not treated any differently.
Right. Something we do all the time is focus on beneficiaries.
And titling.
And titling, of course. Titling. That's actually the thing that, as I have to admit, I forget too often in terms of how important titling is more than just beneficiaries. Because we're used to seeing just the accounts. Although I do read titling a lot. For some reason, it doesn't click in my brain like beneficiaries does. But it's so important to do that, to make sure that things are going the places you want and following the rules you want them to follow.
You don't want to have like your first wife on your life insurance when you're remarried, and you have another child, you may want to add them to that. So I think that's why having a regular review with your advisor is important. Yeah. Especially as life changes.
Yes, exactly, absolutely. Also, I want to touch back on her eldest son actually had special needs. So that could have been some planning that she could have done. However, with this large amount of money, we were talking about this earlier, why don't you touch a little bit on why maybe somebody wouldn't want a special needs trust?
So with special needs trust, typically, especially in Maryland, there are restrictions on what you can use the funds for. And there's also, clawback provisions for Medicaid or other benefits that they receive. And so you may not want to give that money the restrictions if they're going to, in this case, you could get like $5-6 million potentially. It's hard to say with the estate tax how much you'll get, but several $1 million, let's say. And so with that amount of money in the right hands of a financial advisor, it could grow exponentially and be protected from the expenses and to drain away the principal. So you may not want to put it in a special needs trust. You may want to put it in a regular trust, like an irrevocable trust for the benefit of him, but without those restrictions. In Maryland, it would be called a Maryland discretionary trust. And that way it allows the trustees to still care for, because he still may need help in maintaining his lifestyle, but it wouldn't be restricted as to what you could spend the money on. They would have full discretion, which is nice.
It just goes
down amount of money, and especially in the hands of someone like you. I mean, you can protect it and grow the principal, and you can live off the income. And still, live a high quality lifestyle.
Just goes to show that everything has its place. You think a trust fits here. I had somebody call me the other day and said, I was talking to my boss, and he said, a trust is just something you kind of throw your money into and it's protected. Like a pot or something. And I said, I was like, all I can tell you is that sentence was way too simple. There's definitely some planning to go into that, just like anything else. So some people say, Ryan, should I get an IRA, an annuity? And I say, well, an annuity can be an IRA. And you just realize people hear a lot of trigger words and buzzwords, but to put it all together, I think that's the benefit of sitting down with a professional. This day and age, we have an overload of information. And
there's a lot of options, too.
A lot of options, and you don't know, the one trust, like you were saying, if you want to give to a charity is different versus if you want to give it to your kids versus, different things that you're doing. Different goals mean different things.
So we try to do our trust planning at the firm based on goals. We don't try to do it, it might save you taxes down the road, so let's put it all in a trust. because I hate to tie up your money and your lifestyle for no reason.
Right.
For a potential, tax ramification later.
That's wonderful. I'm glad you said that too, because that's the same thing where I feel like the financial industry kind of tips towards a lot of the new software coming out is goal oriented. It says, what do you want?
Exactly.
Because some people will say, well, I want 10 or 15%, not as realistic as saying, no, I think I want to move in 5 years to this house. And then I say, okay, here's how we think. I think
you
can
can
get
work
you
towards that.
Exactly. Rather than just having these figures people think they should be getting all the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or if you want to protect something for your kids, so you can focus on that goal.
Absolutely.
Or grandkids.
College, weddings, goals, trips, things like that.
I think that's what most people's money is for, is to accomplish goals.
Right, I agree.
So not to sit in a vault.
Right, exactly. And I know some people are just sitting there looking at different rates and just thinking how much money can I get at each time. But when we're dealing with retirement, we're really at a time where we're convincing people it's not time to be greedy, it's time to plan. What do you want to do with this money? Because now it's yours, it's in your hands, and now we have to help you plan to get to those goals so you don't just spend it all, pay too much taxes,
right.
Blah, blah, blah.
Well, especially people living longer too. Your planning, I think, has changed because of that too.
Absolutely.
You have to plan for more years with more money, hopefully.
I was just joking around with Sharon out front and saying that I won't put her age on here, but she was planning until 90. And I said, I'm not sure, Sharon, you're really spry, still playing pickleball, you might be going to 100.
Right, so that's 10 more years.
It's 10 more years, and those are a long 10 years.
And it could be expensive
when
medical
you run out of money.
needs and everything, yes.
Yeah. So I know she has a little bit of a support system.
Good.
But
she definitely has resources here too.
Right, exactly. Of course, always here to help.
Absolutely.
So in terms of Aretha and Prince, and any other experience you have, do you have anything to add to what people should do or how to get around this situation?
Sure. I think they definitely should, take time to visit with an attorney and an advisor. Often financial advisors like yourself and me and the attorney, we work well together. It's a partnership, it's a team approach because we're looking at different angles to the same plan. Sit down, often people have complimentary consultations. Ask them, what's involved in a will, even just a simple will, a financial power of attorney, and a healthcare directive. Those are the 3 documents that everybody should have, no matter how much wealth they have. And that way they should get them in place. Even if it's, with a friend or, it doesn't have to be with me, it could be with anybody, but, sit down with them and talk to them about your wishes.
That's what I see
control and getting your wishes on paper, and that way they'll be respected.
Right.
Which I think Ms. Franklin would appreciate.
Of course, of course. And that's what I say as well. Of course, as professionals, we would love to work with everybody, but not everybody fits.
Right. It's about personality.
It's about personality,
Yeah,
but at least talk to somebody because it's important to get your ducks in a row. You don't know what you don't know. And just like you said, planning is a group of people and not usually just one person. Even like I said, I know enough about trust to hand somebody off. I know enough about accounting to hand somebody to an accountant.
Right.
And I see you're in real estate and you're doing different things. Then obviously, we can help you. But when we get into titling, when we get into estate planning, then it gets into your area.
Right.
When it gets too deep into accounting, should we be doing S-corps and things like that? And then we're starting to lean to an accountant, getting into SEPs.
That's all about the relationship too.
Absolutely.
Build that relationship with those professionals.
Absolutely.
And that's really where you get the value for the client, I think.
Right, completely agree. So unless you have anything else to add, I think that's pretty much it. I think we should keep an eye on this because there's nothing messy going on right now, but I'd like to do an update. I think we should also do an update on Prince. I think that'd be great to see.
That's definitely lots to learn from that. What's going on there.
When you can see how messy it does get, I hope for Aretha Franklin's children and her family and all their sake that everything goes smoothly.
Me too.
So it'll be nice to maybe take an example that's already going through it so we don't have to hope another person goes through just to learn.
Exactly. It would be a terrible hope.
It'd be terrible hope. I agree. So I appreciate everybody listening to this episode, and we'll catch you next time on The Financial Advocate.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.